Here we go. So as promised, and because the weather is finally cooperating, here is my Alfa Romeo 4C. And I have to say, after not driving this car all winter long, I really miss this thing. I just washed the car yesterday, and water likes to sit in this little piece right here, so the first time you drive it after washing it, all the water shoots out and squirts you in the face. I think at this point a lot of people have watched my videos and have seen my AMG GTR and my Lamborghini Huracan Performante and only assume that I like really expensive cars. And while the Alfa Romeo 4C isn't super cheap, it's inexpensive relative to the other cars that I own. But I'm being totally honest in saying this, if I could only have one car right now, I might pick the Alfa Romeo 4C. It's that much fun to drive. Now I should specify that the 4C that I'm currently driving is far from stock. It features an extensive list of both performance and visual modifications that off the top of my head, quite frankly, I can't name them all, but perhaps in a future video I can go over every single modification. What was I saying? Now remember, if you guys would like to see a video of me listing off every single modification and how much each of those modifications cost, that's definitely something I can do, because quite frankly at this point in time I've lost track of how much money I've put in this car, which is probably not a good thing, but I can tell you that with all the modifications that have been made, it's very different from stock. It's significantly quicker, it handles significantly better, and it also, I think, looks the part as well. Either way, this has been... I'm getting distracted here, but the car is a lot of fun to drive. Let's just say that. Now, because of the price bracket that this car falls into, I think that there's one obvious comparison that people are going to make, and I'm pretty confident there are already going to be comments down below because people haven't made it to this point in the video calling me an idiot because I bought an Alfa Romeo 4C instead of a C8 Corvette. And in terms of performance numbers, in terms of just sheer speed, I think the C8 Corvette is a better car, not having driven one. But I'll say this much, in my defense, the C8 Corvette wasn't actually out yet by the time that I purchased my Alfa Romeo 4C. And also, just to completely, I guess, void the last point I made, even if it was available, I probably still would have bought this car because I think that the driving experience that it offers is truly unique in comparison to any other vehicle that you can buy for this amount of money. And that's not to say that I wouldn't want a C8 Corvette. In fact, it's the exact opposite. I actually have a deposit down for the Z06 variant. We'll see what happens with that. Either way, I'm a big fan of the C8, but it's a completely different car in comparison to the 4C. I touched on this in a previous video of mine, and it's something that I really feel like I've learned over the years, having driven and owned a number of performance cars, and that is that a lot of people get really wrapped up in statistics like horsepower numbers, 0 to 60 times, even top speed. And while all of these stats are relevant to, I guess, the performance limits or capability of the car, none of those stats really take into consideration the experience and feel of actually driving that car. It's great to go really fast and feel the G-forces associated with that, but if it's totally numb in terms of how the car does those things, I think that the overall driving experience is a lot less fun. And I think that's what's great about the Alfa Romeo 4C. Statistically, it's really nothing on paper, but once you actually get in and drive it, I think a lot of people would be very surprised at how much fun it actually is. And I think what's so much fun and unique about the experience of the 4C is the fact that it's highly compromised, which might sound like a bad thing, and I guess if you're buying this car as a daily driver, it probably wouldn't be the wisest choice. But if you think about modern performance cars in general, while they're extremely capable, they're also less and less compromised in comparison to what they used to be. A supercar used to mean a car that is simply made for driving and nothing else. But if you look at an AMG GTR as an example, that's a car that I've been daily driving. I know some people don't consider it to be a supercar, but it's extremely capable both on and off track, but it's also remarkably comfortable. You have really good trunk space. I put winter tires on it and drove it through the Canadian winter. That's pretty much all you need to know. It's very, very usable considering how capable it is, where the Alfa Romeo 4C is far from comfortable. It's very difficult to get in and out of. It's a little bit rattly. The quality is questionable in certain areas. You have no glove box. You have basically no trunk space, and the trunk space you do have basically sits directly against the engine, so whatever's in that compartment, if you're going for a drive of over 10 minutes, it's basically going to cook, which is great if you're delivering hot soup. Otherwise, it's not so good. But these are just compromises as it relates to comfort and convenience. What about actually driving the car? Well, if you drive a 4C, the first thing that you will immediately notice, even before you get the car moving, is the fact that the wheel is incredibly difficult to turn, and that's because this car does not have power steering. The steering is fully manual. So the first couple times you drive it, you really have to get used to kind of getting the car rolling ever so slightly to turn the wheel. That's not to say that you can't turn the wheel while the car is stood still. It's just a lot more difficult than it would be in any modern car with full power steering, where it takes minimal effort. Also, when it comes to actually driving the car, obviously once it's rolling, there's a lot less effort required to turn the wheel, but I will admit that the stock setup with the suspension and the way that the camber is set on the front wheels isn't ideal in terms of the car kind of bouncing around and really reacting to the road, which is cool the first time that you drive it because you really do feel a lot more than you would in pretty much any other modern car. But there are little fixes that you can do that have been done to this car that make the overall feel and driving experience, I think, a lot better. But with manual steering, I think what's cool about this car is it really makes you realize how much the power steering system in a modern car is helping you keep the car perfectly straight. Get up to speed or even drive at low speeds, and it's incredible in a car like this how much the bumps in the road cause the wheel to turn. So this is legitimately one of those cars that you can't drive with no hands on the wheel, because the first bump that you hit, the wheel will immediately react, because that's what's happening when the wheels make contact with the road. With the power steering system, it's kind of helping it stay straight. With this, there's no assistance, which I think is really cool, and it gives the car this go-kart feel. Transmission in this car is also a little bit unusual. It's a dual clutch automatic. Obviously you can shift it manually with the paddles, but it works and responds more like a manual than other dual clutch transmissions that I've driven and currently own. One weird thing is that this car doesn't actually have creep. So just like a manual, it won't go forward unless you give it a little bit of gas, and you can actually feel the clutch engage and disengage, where I think in most automatic transmissions it's so smooth you don't really feel anything, which is kind of cool. And I know there are people that are of the opinion that this car would be better off with a true manual transmission, and I agree with that in some ways, and in some ways I don't. I think that if you are looking for the experience of a mid-engine Ferrari or something like that, this is kind of a mini variation of that. I like the fact that it kind of incorporates an interesting combination of very modern kind of performance car technologies, but also very old school stuff. So the combination of the dual clutch transmission and the manual steering with the mid-engine layout, and of course a carbon tub, it's a very cool and odd combination of features that I think makes this car very unique in comparison to a lot of other options. Now, getting back to statistics, the power numbers of the Alfa Romeo 4C by modern car standards are pretty unimpressive. Stock, the car makes 237 horsepower as claimed by Alfa Romeo. This car, with the modifications and the tune that it's running, I'm estimating is at about 300 horsepower, which is a significant increase over stock. I haven't had the car on a dyno though, so I can't tell you exactly how much power it makes. Perhaps we can do that in a future video. Either way, even in stock form, the claimed 0 to 60 time is something like 4.1, 4.2 seconds, which is still pretty quick for a car. And the reason why it's able to achieve these numbers with seemingly such small amounts of power is because of a statistic that I think a lot of people don't take into consideration with modern cars, and that is the weight. Now granted, the North American cars are heavier than the European variations because of extra safety things that have to be included, but the weight with all of the fluids in, as far as I'm aware, in a 4C, whether it's Coupe or Spider, because there's not a significant weight difference between the two, is about 2,400 pounds, which is significantly lighter than pretty much most modern cars, at least most modern cars that are street legal. And just to give you an idea of how light that actually is, that's almost 1,000 pounds lighter than my Huracan Performante. So obviously if a car weighs a lot less, it's not going to require as much power to achieve similar performance numbers as heavier, much higher power cars. I think the power to weight ratio is something that a lot of people should take into consideration more so than just outright horsepower numbers. And for those that are curious about this car, with the modifications that have been done, granted I still think that it needs a new tune and there are a few other bits to go on the car that would affect this as well, but we'll test it once it's all said and done. I think this car is going to be capable of a 0 to 60 time of about 3.5 seconds, which is a significant jump over stock, and honestly really fast for a car like this, which has a rear mid-engine 1.75 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. The engine is absolutely tiny, so to achieve performance numbers like that is actually really impressive. Back on the topic of weight, because I feel like it is by far the most important characteristic of the Alfa Romeo 4C, and part of the reason why I bought this car, because I truly do feel like nobody is ever going to build a car quite like this again, certainly not at this particular price point. The reason why it's so light is because of the carbon monocoque construction, where basically where I'm sat is like a carbon fiber bathtub, for lack of a better word. And the fact that you're getting that on a car this inexpensive is really impressive. McLarens, which are $300,000, have carbon monocoques. This little Alfa Romeo also has one. Sorry about that, guys, my camera died, but what I was getting at is it kind of comes back to the argument, would you rather drive a fast car slow or a slow car fast? And while I don't entirely agree with that statement, because I still think it's a lot of fun to drive a Lamborghini on the road, even though you're not really pushing it to the limit, and I don't want to brand the 4C as a slow car, because that's definitely not the case, but I think what's special about this car is the fact that it's lightweight, with the extra feedback and handling characteristics that come along with the manual steering, along with the fact that it's maybe not overpowered to begin with, means that you as the driver, both on the road as well as on track, really feel like you're not necessarily pushing the car right to its limit, but you're approaching the limits more so in a car like this than you would in something like my Lamborghini Huracan Performante or even my AMG GTR, where I think getting to the limit of a car like that is really just going to require an incredible amount of driving skill that the average Joe simply does not have. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we buy these cars to have fun in them, and for me, the experience of all the unique combination of characteristics that an Alfa Romeo 4C has not only makes it a lot of fun, it's also one of those cars that every single time I drive, I'm reminded of how special and how different it is in comparison to everything else on the road. And that, I guess, concludes my introduction video of my Alfa Romeo 4C. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Of course, more content on this car coming soon, but feel free to let me know what you'd like to see specifically down below in the comments, and I'll do my best to make that happen. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to support it with a like. If you have any questions, leave them down below as well. And of course, if you're not subscribed to the channel and don't want to miss out on new videos every week on all kinds of car related things, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. There's a guy on a lawnmower going by me right now. We'll see you in the next one. Also, I am sweating like crazy.